Federal aviation workers are holding a press conference urging Congress to end its partial shutdown. The disagreements that the Republicans and Democrats have had over funding DHS has also impacted federal aviation workers as well. So let's listen to them.
Or what happens when you do. We know what this costs because, unfortunately, we've just been through it. The last shutdown cost the U.S. economy more than $6 billion in just 6 weeks. More than 5 million trips disrupted, $200 million in delays alone. And those are just the numbers we can measure. What's harder to measure, but just as real, is what happens to the workforce itself. The average TSA officer earns about $35,000 per year. These are not workers who can shrug off a missed paycheck. These are paychecks that cover groceries, rent, childcare, gas. This is money that families depend on. And when the workforce is hurting, staffing weakens, and the entire aviation system becomes less reliable for every single traveler who passes through it. And this is not a partisan issue. An overwhelming percentage of Americans across both parties support guaranteeing pay for TSA officers. The American public understands what's at stake. It's time for Congress to do its job. We're not here today asking for a temporary patch. We're not here for a last-minute deal struck at the 11th hour that buys a few more weeks or months. We're here for a permanent solution. We're preparing to welcome the world for a run of historic global events. The World Cup, America's 250th birthday, more than 3 million people going to our airports every day. The workforce is too important, too essential to be used as political leverage. Pay the people who protect our skies. Protect the system that powers our economy. Fix this permanently. In the meantime, if you pass through an airport this week, take a moment to thank a TSA officer. U.S. Travel is mobilizing our members in the industry across the country with messages, social tools, and resources to show appreciation in local airports from coast to coast. If you're in the industry and want to help, please reach out to our team. This moment calls for the totality of the industry's voice. TSA officers are showing up. They're doing their jobs. They're keeping millions of Americans moving safely every single day. It's time for Congress to do the same. And now let me introduce Governor Sununu for a few comments as well.
All right, good morning. First and foremost, a huge thank you, right? A huge thank you to all those TSA agents a few miles from here, not getting a full paycheck last week, probably looking down the barrel of a zero paycheck in the next couple weeks. But they're out there. They're doing their job. They're making sure people are coming through. They understand that not just today, but in the next couple months, you're going to see record numbers of people traveling as we hit spring break. It's already a very strong year in the industry as folks come to the airports, go through those TSA lines, making sure that planes leave on time. You're looking at close to 3 million people a day in some of our high peak days coming up. Those are real numbers. They're not getting paid, and they're still showing up. God bless them. And these folks right here, right? You have flight attendants. You have pilots. You have air traffic controllers. It's solidarity. This is not just about those TSOs and those individuals. This is about these industries as a whole, travel and tourism, those frontline airport workers, the airlines themselves, these folks that come to work every single day. It's not just about this group or that group. And that's the amazing message I think that Capitol Hill needs to hear. At the end of the day, it's those agents not getting paid, but who are the real victims? It's the American public. It's the American public that is going to be traveling, that is going to potentially be stuck in these long lines. The planes, the system is safe. The planes are going to take off and land on time, but the potential lines that you're looking at and the delays, the penalty to the American public that have nothing to do with the back and forth argument going on Capitol Hill, it's completely unfair and, as Jeff pointed out, completely unnecessary. They have those tools. They have those bills sitting right there before them where they could pay those aviation workers across the board. It's kind of logical, right? If you go to work, you need to get paid. That's actually the law, by the way, for every business in America. In fact, the ironic part is the federal government will fine you if, as a business, you don't pay your workers, but they're not paying theirs. They're on Capitol Hill today. These are their workers. Now, I know there's 100 senators and 435 congressmen, and they can each point at each other, but at the end of the day, it's each and every one of their responsibilities to make sure this system, this government system, works efficiently and works for the American public. They have failed. And they're not just failing this time. We've been here before. We were here back in October, right? We were here back in October, and it lasted 6 weeks. I remember going back, and a lot of folks said, well, that only might last a couple weeks, and that was the hope, and clearly that wasn't the case. I mean, they were ready to really almost throw Thanksgiving away on the American public. That's how close it came, right? And so the fear is that, once again, they're not going to act until there's something really, really desperate happens, right? So we see those long lines, and unfortunately, we don't want to get there. We just ask them to do the very simple thing of doing their job. So it's a big thank you to them. It's a huge call to simply stand up, sign these bills, find a way to do it. You can have political fights, of course. But people have to appreciate, in this new age of kind of populism on both sides, the rules have changed a little bit here. Are we looking down the barrel of every 3 or 4 months when somebody has a political disagreement? The entire tourism industry, airports, the airline industry, all these individuals behind me have to worry about whether the whole system is going to come to a screeching halt. And it's not just about the airlines. This is the economic system of this country. This is business travel. This is international travel. This is holiday travel. This is, as Jeff said, this is a $1 trillion industry or more when you add it all together. And those dominoes, as one it's just not just that domino of the TSOs today. That's why everybody's here. The whole system starts to break down, and it's the American public that pays the price. So it's a very clear message. Stand up, do your jobs. The money's there. That's another thing I want to point out to the press. Everyone who has bought a ticket, everyone who has purchased an aspect of airline and air traffic travel has put money into these funds. The money is there. It's just the simple sentence of saying, and now we're going to actually release those funds for this purpose. Other funds across America have that ability. Highway Trust Fund. Other trust funds in the time of need and during a government shutdown can spend those dollars, not this one. Why? Well, they need a political football to kick around. At the end of the day, it's the American public that they're kicking around. It's their own constituents that they're ignoring in that need. So I think the message has to be strong. We're not going to relent on it one bit. I know there's a lot of work to do on Capitol Hill, but at the end of the day, I think keeping government open, paying your workers, resolving those fundamental differences on appropriations, that has to be first and foremost. I heard earlier today, Chuck Schumer was here talking about agriculture. Oh, that's nice. Maybe you should focus on doing your job and the highest priority of paying your own workers, which you have been hired to manage. It's not fundamentally a difficult thing to understand, but they'll do everything they can to ignore it. And at the end of the day, it's these individuals standing with us today and the American public that gets hurt. So it's great to have the solidarity around it. We need a strong message. We need the press to highlight it. We need folks to go. There's a great website. Why is it great? Because we created it. payfederalavionworkers.com. Payfederalavionworkers.com. This is where we're asking the public to go to get involved, to make your voices heard. Or just pick up the phone to your congressman and senator. Call their offices. I'm a former governor. Believe me, when people called the office, we heard. We kept track of every call. We kept track of everything that came in. So your voice will be heard. If you're a parent with a student that's about to head out, maybe on spring break, let's make sure that your student can get from point A to point B safely and securely on time. Pick up the phone. Make your voices heard so that the system stays robust and vibrant for this entire country. Now, as a former governor, I always talk too much, but I want to ask Todd Hopley to come in. Todd runs AAAE and really represents these airports. So many frontline workers that are at the tip of the spear on this one.
Thank you, Governor. For the third time in less than a year, the United States government has failed at its most basic task of funding all the federal agencies. This time around, the failure is isolated at the funding of the Department of Homeland Security, but the implications are quite serious. This unforced error means that once again, TSA screeners are being required to work without pay with the promise that eventually the government will make it up to them. The screeners are coming to work and doing their job, but it is not sustainable for them to work without pay. The first $0 paycheck is a little over a week away. These are critical jobs, but they're not particularly high-paying jobs. To be blunt, these are paycheck-to-paycheck jobs. Every day that Congress refuses to act, the harder this is on the screener workforce. We've seen the movie. Sick outs, screeners taking gig work and second jobs, and more alarmingly, leaving the screener workforce entirely in search of more stable employment. Let me be clear. Our government has failed this segment of the federal workforce. Congress needs to fix this without delay. There's a public policy element in this shutdown, and let's not be naive, there's a political element in this shutdown. But we cannot forget that most importantly, there's a human element in this shutdown. Remember that as this stalemate drags on, there are conversations taking place in households all across the country that none of us should feel good about. We as a nation can't be proud that screeners are contemplating another job because this one's become too unpredictable. Screeners are trying to figure out where the rent money is going to come from for next month, where the gas money is going to come from for next week, why they have to cancel an anniversary dinner with someone they love, or how it is that they're going to tell their children they don't get to go to the movies this weekend because the federal government can't get their act together and pay them for the work they perform on behalf of the American people. As was noted, spring break is here. Airports in Arizona and Florida are operating at passenger levels way above average. As an example, Phoenix usually gets between 40 and 45,000 passengers a day. The other day they had 80,000 passengers. More volume, more stress on the system. We need those screeners laser focused on their jobs, not wondering how they're going to put food on the table, gas in the car, and keep a roof over their head while still serving the American people. Airports and our aviation partners are stepping in to help where we can, providing food and gift cards for gas. But let's be honest, these gestures only go so far. Congress, fix this and fix it now. It was an unforced error to get in the situation in the first place. Let's not compound the problem by letting it drag out. Replacing a screener is not like flipping a light switch. It takes months to get new screeners trained and on the front lines, and we don't have months to spare. We're in the spring break travel season, and the summer is just around the corner. We call on Congress to reopen the Department of Homeland Security immediately and pass legislation to protect the paychecks of these hardworking federal employees whose mission it is to keep us safe. Thank you. And now the three of us will answer questions if you have them. Sure. The question was, when are we going to, we've started to see longer lines in airports, and when is this going to compound? And I think you're going to see that as every day goes by. The longer this goes on, in the past, what has happened in the past is usually a good indicator of things. We're going to see sick outs. We're going to see screeners who love their jobs, but are going to be forced to look for other jobs. They're going to have to TSA is going to do their very best to try and keep those lines moving, but they're not going to sacrifice safety, and that means people should be prepared as this drags out for longer lines. Take more time. You're going to have to pack your patience if you're going to the airport.
I wonder if you have a solution, because what you said is fix it. And what I wonder is, obviously this isn't about the reason the government shut down, NHS shut down, it's not about whether TSA screeners are being trained or hired or paid or any of those things. It has to do completely with what's going on in other parts of DHS, specifically with ICE and border protection. And I just wonder if you have a solution for that. Is the answer that all that should continue as it's going along? Or is the answer that some of those things need to be changed? For instance, you talked about screeners needing to be trained. ICE agents are not being trained the way that they used to be. What's your solution to get Congress to do that? I know you've dealt with 400 House members.
Sure. So the solution's right there. There are a couple different acts and bills sitting before Congress that would pay federal aviation workers, that would give them the carve-out, right? Just like any business, if you're struggling in a business, if workers are coming, you have to pay them. So it simply says if you're a federal aviation worker and you're coming to work, we're going to pay you. The money's there. It's been appropriated. It just hasn't been released. So the answer is actually, I think, pretty darn simple. And there's a couple different ways. A couple different congressmen have put bills up. Couple different ways to do it. They just haven't been able to get it over the line.
Yeah, I would just add to that in the last shutdown, more than $6 billion lost, 1 full point of GDP. It's actually, there are two very simple things to do. One is just prevent shutdowns. Just don't allow these things to happen. You can't have a shutdown in the state.
Right.
This isn't an option. If you're going to keep that option, how do we exempt everybody connected to aviation? Air traffic controllers, TSA, CBP, all of those should be exempted in order to ensure that the aviation system continues to run. Now, obviously, they don't want to do that. They'd rather use this industry, the people behind us, the people who are on the front lines today, as pawns. That's something they should be ashamed about.
So I can tell you that they've moved. I think Caroline Levitt had a number yesterday in terms of the number of folks that they have moved out. There are aircraft from all different aspects, both commercial and other aspects of aviation, all participating in making sure, specifically on the American side, I can't speak to other parts of the world, that making sure that Americans have a gateway out of there and for free. So everyone has kind of pitched in. Everyone has said we're here for assistance, and it's being coordinated mostly through the Department of Defense and the State Department. Well, I can just tell you, we have armies of people on Capitol Hill every day having this conversation on both sides of the aisle, kind of pleading with folks that might be on the fence about moving forward either one of these direct solutions. What they do want to do with DHS, again, that's their issue. TSA can be carved out. It's right there for them. And so, yeah, we're advocating constantly on the issue. I want to throw a quick pitch in here. I think Ha McNeil, the administrator of TSA, has done a phenomenal job. She's out there every day. She's keeping her staff motivated. She's traveling around. She's doing everything she can to keep the system functioning. And I know it's been a 24-hour effort on her team. But at some point, it'll be about 2 weeks from now, just shy, maybe a week and a half, actually. That first zero paycheck is going to come in for those individuals.
Yeah, I'll just add, I'll echo the comments on Ha, who's done a fantastic job leading TSA and keeping the morale within TSA high, which is obviously not something easy to do at this time. The simple answer, and the governor's right, we've got teams up on the Hill. The simple answer is no. People are not responding with the urgency that they need to be responding today. They haven't felt the pressure as of yet. We just saw this, as was mentioned back in October and November. It took several weeks for the pain to really kick in. And it wasn't until the pain began to kick in that Congress woke up to the problem. Why do we have to watch this movie again? Why do we need to watch TSA officers go home without a paycheck, be unable to buy groceries, be unable to put gas in the car? We've seen this movie before, and yet Congress demands replaying it. So it's going to take more pressure from industry. It's going to take, unfortunately, it seems, the natural behaviors of TSA officers, as Todd mentioned, going and getting gig jobs, calling out for various reasons. It's going to take long lines, apparently, for Congress to respond. I guess I would call on travelers to demand response before then. We, all of us collectively, shouldn't be the ones who have to go through the pain for Congress to wake up.
And I'm going to go ahead, Todd, please.
I was just going to add one quick thing that makes this one a little more challenging than the last shutdown, and that is the last shutdown, the entire federal government was closed. They used aviation as a lever to try and reopen the government. This time, there's just one agency that's shut down, and that means that the American people are a little more diffused in their attention that they're paying to this. If you're traveling, you're certainly paying attention, but if you're not a traveler, you may not be paying as much attention to this shutdown as you were to previous shutdowns. So that's why it's really important for anybody who is involved in the travel industry to make sure that the voice is heard and that we get Congress not to be on spring break, but we get them to actually do their job.
I'm going to hit one more point. I think it's something I heard. How does TSA recruit? We need more TSA workers. We need more air traffic controllers. Where is the message we're sending to that potential young workforce that wants to come in when they go, I'm going to come into an industry where it's not just once every couple years that there might be a hiccup, but a couple times a year, I might be that political football that's being used and I don't get a paycheck. We're trying to rebuild all of air traffic control across this country. It's an amazing project, the Air Traffic Control Modernization Project, and I think FAA is doing a very good job moving that stuff forward. But how does that move forward? You need workforce behind it, right? So they're trying to do their job to rebuild what is really the restructure, one of the largest telecommunications system in the world. They're going to rebuild the whole thing in the next couple of years. But you got to have those controllers and those TSA agents. You got to have the whole system working, right? And what does it say to those young people when they're making a decision on what workforce to choose? It's going to be really hard to be able to keep hiring folks into this industry as a whole if this is the message that we're delivering. Yeah. So to take us back a week or so, we got word very, very late one night that pre-check and global entry were going to basically be paused. For the next 12 hours, it was an all hands on deck, on the phone. We at least got pre-check back reinstated within the early hours of the next morning, which was great. I've had direct conversations with folks, both at TSA, Homeland Security. Right now, they don't seem inclined to reopen global entry. I think it's a huge mistake. When you have the most vetted, secured passengers being able to move through the system seamlessly, to shut that system down and shove everyone into a standard line, not only does that not make actual mathematical sense in terms of actually moving people through a line, but it actually creates a disincentive. Why would anybody want to go through the global entry process if every time there's a shutdown, they're going to be kicked back to the regular line? So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're advocating very strongly on that piece, but right now, I don't know, unless you guys have heard anything differently, they don't seem inclined to move.
The only thing I would add is that pausing pre-check and global entry creates security risks. These are travelers who are pre-vetted. These are travelers who have given up information about themselves. Now you're throwing them all in the same line and expecting a TSO or a CBP officer to pick a needle out of a haystack. That's exactly why we created these programs, to not do that. There is absolutely zero justification for the Department of Homeland Security pausing either program. We've been pleased to see with White House engagement, pre-check up and running. We'll need that same engagement to get global entry up and running. We're having those conversations daily. I'm optimistic it will happen soon, but it defies logic why either program would be paused.
Interesting comments that we're hearing there from those federal aviation workers. You can remember the next time you are at an airport before this shutdown gets cleared up is that they are going, a lot of them, without pay at this moment, and that's their big issue and their concern, particularly when you think about this being a partial government shutdown. And as you just heard them say, this is not the larger full government shutdown that we were faced with just months ago at the end of last year that was historic here for our country.